Peace be unto you. This is Jibreel Khazan. My friends call me Easy, and I am the moderator of the program, This Little Light of Mine. We're outside the Dudley building on the illustrious campus of the North Carolina A&T State University. And we're in front of the statue, which was designed and built by Professor Dr. James Barnhill of the illustrious faculty, the art department of the University of North Carolina State A&T University. He will say some words about the statue, and we want to thank Dr. Barnhill for being here today. It's a great day. You bring the light with you, and we're so happy that you're going to share your experiences with us. Tell us something about the statue and how it came to be, and who's the sponsor behind it.
Chancellor James Rennick approached me about doing this piece some 2 years ago now. And it was unveiled just last year, the same day, February 1 of 2002.
Yes.
I'm still back in the last century.
That's all right. His anxiety, he just saw the videotape, and he did a great job with this video.
And the video, I must say, was tremendous. I mean, it was
because of him and the concept.
From the heart and to the heart.
Yeah.
And I was incredibly honored to be asked to do this piece, and I have to confess that when I started, I was familiar with the sit-in. I knew that it was an event that happened, but in my mind it was one event among many. And you know, downtown Greensboro, there was the little historical plaque, and it just didn't convey what I have come to find out and understand how truly big, truly, you know, the enormous impact that it was, that it had, that I'm here talking to somebody that I wouldn't be talking to otherwise, and I know so many wonderful people. You know, I'm a product of society today, and having just witnessed that video, to know what it was then, to know what these four young men were up against, you included here, it was truly heroic.
Well, you are our heroes.
Well,
we just did a great
I've done
thing.
a small thing compared.
He's done
this
great
only
thing,
caps.
you
This
know?
is just.
He's a master builder. He's a master architect, and he's been given the gift of Almighty God to be inspired to put this together. This is truly a worthy monument. Not because we were in it, it's because what he did, his eye, his hands, beauty, God gave him grace, the eye of the beholder, from his head to his feet. He has put together a lasting monument which will be here when all of us go, because the bodies were out. But the name of Dr. James Barnhill, master builder, architect, and artist, it will go down with those who built the pyramids in Egypt, the Colossus in Rome, and Greece. The great,
This is very floral here.
Yes, that's what, the great artist and architect. We're so pleased you're here today.
I appreciate it, and you honor me.
Yep.
And Franklin McCain also said, and you touched on this, that this isn't a monument to these four guys, but these four young men just symbolize something much bigger than they. And so I think Franklin McCain, when he spoke last year on that was his whole point, that this is about something so much bigger. These four are just pictures, I guess, of, to represent it.
We're emblematical of the spirit of humanity to rise to higher heights, to want to be free, and to want to share this freedom with all humanity, whatever part we live on the globe. And that's why we're so blessed to have you. And we thank you again, Dr. Barnhill. And we keep you in our prayers. Remember us in your prayers.
I will.
Success in this life and the
Jibreel,
hereafter. Thank you.
And I'm also proud to call you my brother. I mean,
You're my brother. He's our brother, and we're his brother. And we thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jibreel.
Okay, have a great day and a beautiful life. Peace be unto you. Okay. Gandhi G, Jesus, Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. King, Dr. Joseph McNeil, Dr. Franklin McCain, Dr. Bay Richmond, and of course, Easy Blair. Well, they say he has a doctor too. We all thank and love you. Thank you very much, okay? And we don't forget Dr. James C. Rennick, the chancellor of this great university, and Dr. David Hort and others. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Okay, peace be unto you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Welcome to This Little Light of Mine, an independent program viewed on New Bedford Television 95 cable access from the city of New Bedford, Massachusetts. I am Jibreel Al-Akasha Kali Ma'at Allahi Khazan. My friends just call me Easy. Sometimes they know me as Ezel Alexander Blair Jr. And we're privileged today to be on the campus of the famous, most outstanding North Carolina Agricultural and Technical Technical University in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today is Friday, January the 31st, the year 2003. And we're on this campus today to celebrate the 43rd anniversary of the famous and historical sit-in movement to acquire equal rights in all places of public accommodations in America, which was initiated on Monday, February 1st, 1960, here in Greensboro, North Carolina, by four youth, as you see here: Joseph McNeil, Ezel Blair Jr., which I was called then, Franklin McCain, and David Richmond Sr., all freshman scholars of wisdom on the campus of North Carolina, then known A&T College. These four freshmen, students of honey amber complexion, they were called Negroes at that time, or colored people, or Creoles, or Indians. They are the founding forefathers of the freedom movement in America for the decade of 1960. And this sit-in movement, which began as a spark of protest against racial discrimination in all places of public accommodations, spread throughout the South during the spring of 1960 and throughout the entire nation. So that by the end of the decade, or that year of 1960, there were over 400 demonstrations throughout the South. Hundreds and thousands of young people and adults were arrested for standing up for their rights. And it even helped elect President John F. Kennedy as the President of the United States. For in his debate with then Vice President Nixon, the question was asked, do you believe that all people should have access to public accommodations, restaurants, movies, theaters, bathrooms, etc.? Kennedy said yes, and Richard Nixon said no. And that was the straw which broke the camel's back and led to the overwhelming vote of non-white people, Negroes or colored people, Indians or Creoles as they were called at this time, the people of honey amber complexion, to vote for then Senator John F. Kennedy. And the rest is history. He became the President of the United States. Now, without further ado, we are here for the annual breakfast, sit-in breakfast, on the campus of North Carolina State A&T University. We would like to thank everyone for inviting us here today, especially my friends Joseph McNeil, Ezel Blair Jr., of which I am Jibreel Khazan, Franklin McCain, David Richmond, and their families, who sacrificed their lives, and all of their supporters, the members of the Student Executive Committee for Justice, both students at A&T, Bennett College, Greensboro College, Guilford College, the Women's College of UNC here in Greensboro, the Lutheran College, as well as the students from Dudley High School and the hundreds and thousands of citizens who support this movement. We'd like to thank also the presidents of A&T, beginning with President Warmoth T. Gibbs and his family, the late Dr. Lewis Dowdy Sr. and Mrs. Dowdy and their family, the late Reverend Dr. Samuel D. Proctor of our university here. May God bless them all and their families. Dr. Mo Fort, who's still living and who's now on the campus. And our President Chancellor, Dr. James Rennick, and his wonderful wife and family for guiding us to higher heights as we leave the 20th century and move on into the 21st century and the next millennium, 1,000 years. I would like to think that North Carolina State A&T University shall be called the Gold Coast of Enlightenment for the 21st century and the next 1,000-year millennium. This school is destined to lead the United States of America, the Western Hemisphere, and the world as the #1 university on the planet Earth. Do you hear me? It's prophesied, so let it be written, so let it be done. Now I want to thank some other people here for this great opportunity. We wish to thank again Dr. James Rennick, the Chancellor, Mr. Ralph Shelton, who is the Chairman of the Board of Trustees, and all of the illustrious people on A&T's Board of Trustees, Dr. Colleen P. Grotsky, who is the Executive Assistant to the Chancellor, Mr. Charles Watkins, the photographer, Mrs. Mabel Scott, who is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Development and the University Relations, President and Alumni Association, we want to thank that person, and Mr. David Howard, who has done so gracious job to help raise the funds for this project as well as for North Carolina State A&T University. We want to thank a very important person here, Professor Dr. Howard James Barnhill, Professor Dr. James Barnhill, whose genius it was through his eyes, his mind, and his hands to create the image of this statue, which is now part of the legacy of history of our peoples in America and throughout the world. We want to thank God for him and for Dr. Rennick's genius and creative mind to think of the idea to have a statue here on this campus to remind us of the struggle of our peoples, the African, Eurasian American peoples, in their stride and upward mobility toward freedom. Once again, thank you, and we do appreciate all of your help. We'd like to thank also the late Dr. George Simpkins and his wife and his family, of the past president of the Greensboro chapter of the NAACP. We'd like to thank the Reverend Marion Jones and Ms. Elizabeth Jones, who were the founders of the Congress of Racial Equality here in Greensboro. To thank all the civic leaders, to thank my father and my mother, Mr. Ezel Blair Sr., Mrs. Corrine Blair, my great-great-grandmother, the wife of the Reverend Noah R. Hedden, the founder of the New Zion Baptist Church here in Greensboro, Mrs. Ardelia Harrington Hedden, and the families of Mr. and Mrs. McNeil, Joseph McNeil's mother and father, the family of Mr. Richmond, David Richmond, Mr. and Mrs. Richmond, and the family of Franklin McCain, Mr. and Mrs. McCain, for giving us birth and for giving us guidance so that we could be here today, right and positive guidance. There are many, many others we'd like to thank. I'd like to thank all the churches and all the schools which educated us, all the community leaders, one person, Mr. David Moorhead, of Hayes Taylor YMCA, the director for so many years, Mr. Estelle Hopper, who was the outreach worker for the Hayes Taylor YMCA. We also like to thank President Dr. Willoughby Player and her staff at the Bennett College Methodist Schools for young women here, and the young women who were student leaders on that campus, as well as the others. I can't thank everyone enough, particularly the late Mr. Ellis Corbett, who was the Director of Public Relations here at A&T during that time. He guided our movement into positive ways. The late Master Counselor, I can't think of his name now, but it will come up to me soon. The Reverend McCoy and his family, Mr. Jimmy Barber, who was a counselor for us, and Dean William Gamble, Sr. He's the man who was our counselor and our guide. If I have forgotten anyone, please forgive me. We'd like to thank the late, great Negro laureate, poet, the late Langston Hughes, and the man who wrote the book of Pictorial History, Langston Hughes, and it won't come to me right now. I think it's because I'm going on 61. I'm somewhat nervous today. He is the man whose book we were reading. And he is the man whose birthday is also on February 1, 1960. Irving Metzler, that is his name, the co-writer of the book, The History, a Pictorial History of the American Negro. Mr. Metzler has written over 100 books for children. He's from Worcester, Massachusetts. He's still alive. He's in New York City. Mr. Metzler, to you and Langston Hughes, we give you our warmest regards and love, because it was your book that inspired the four of us in room 2128 Scott Hall during the year of 1959 and early 60 to make that giant step for freedom. We'd like to also thank, again, the students who gave their lifeblood to make this movement possible. We can't name all of you, but you know who you are. We want to also thank Mr. Councilman and County Commissioners, Mr. Melvin Skip Austin, the president of the state chapter of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Attorney Earl Jones. We'd like to thank also Mr. MacArthur Davis, who is the executive director of the International Civil Rights Museum, and their wonderful staff for the last 10 years, who have been striving hard to put together a place where the memories of the struggle of this movement, not only in Greensboro, but throughout the world for equal rights and human rights, will be remembered. We thank you. We'd like to thank all the members of the Panhellenic Council of the Greek organizations, for they have given us a yeoman's job of support from day one of our movement. We'd like to thank Mrs. Sarah Herbin and Mr. Charles Davis Sr. and their families of the American Friends Service, the Quakers here who helped us in our stride for freedom. We'd like to thank also the martyrs, the young people who died in this struggle. We'd like to thank the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Mrs. Rosa Parks, and all the members of the Montgomery bus boycott movement. We'd like to thank the late, great Reverend Dr. Adam Clayton Powell, who was one of my mentors, who was one of the most powerful congressmen of color, of honey color hue, in Congress during the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The Reverend late Dr. Adam Clayton Powell was one of the founders of the National Conference. He was the co-chairman, or the chairman of the National Conference on Black Power, which formed in his office in 1965, 66. To all of you who have given your lifeblood, we thank you. Now, a special thanks for the people of New Bedford, Massachusetts, who have honored me over the years. In March of this past year, 2002, Professor Everett Hoagland, the Poet Laureate of the City of New Bedford and a graduate of Lincoln University, nominated me, Jibreel Khazan, Ezel Bled Jr., for a distinctive honor in the City of New Bedford, that of being New Bedford's most distinguished person. And a day was set aside on behalf of this effort to remember Jibreel Khazan, which was February 1. And since then, it was declared that since this day, the undersigned respectfully ask that the council hear from Jibreel Khazan in response to a resolution given to him for his humanitarian efforts on behalf of the City of New Bedford. And because of the efforts of Professor Hoagland, who's a professor at UMass in North Dartmouth, Massachusetts, Mr. Joseph Jojo Force, the city councilman from Ward number 4, and Councilman Mrs. James Gonzalez, Ward Councilor for Ward number 5, and the other distinguished members of New Bedford City Council, including its president, Mr. John T. Saunders. I would like to thank these people. Dennis Alves, Congressman Brian Gomes, Councilman Brian Gomes, Dennis Lawrence, Mr. George Rogers especially, who was the chairman of Memorials, who guided this resolution through the New Bedford City Council. Mr. Dennis Farris, these are the councilors that I'm going to remember. Paul Cosera, Joe F. D. Demirios, Leo R. Pimentel. These are the members of the New Bedford City Council. We'd like to thank the Mayor of New Bedford, distinguished Mr. Mayor Frederick Callis and his wonderful staff, and especially Mr. Adonis Ferreira, who's the Cultural Affairs Coordinator. That evening, on Saturday, March 16th, the year 2002, I was honored by the members of the Martha Briggs Educational Society, one of the oldest African-American Negro colored women's organizations in Massachusetts and in this nation. One of the great leaders is Mrs. Eloise Pina, my guardian mother, as well as some of the other ladies whom you can help coach me. Mrs. Waters, the mother of Dr. Herbert Waters. Mrs. Morton, Mrs. Waters' relative. These are some of the key people in New Bedford who keep these going. The late counselor and mentor, Mr. Duncan Dotton, and his wife, Mrs. Marguerite Ruber Dotton, and their daughter, Miss Carol Wilder, and Reverend Stephen Dotton, who took me in when I was a stranger in New Bedford, Massachusetts in 1965. When I couldn't get a job here in Greensboro or anywhere in the state of North Carolina, I was whiteball, or say blackball, because I was considered to be a troublemaker, along with Mr. David Richmond, unfortunately, who passed in 1990 from a broken heart, because no one wanted to help this young man who helped get us our freedom. A tragedy. We should never let that happen again. I would also like to thank Mr. Clarence Brooks Sr. and his wife, Mrs. Kathleen Brooks, and their family for helping me to find a place to live in New Bedford. We'd also like to thank Mr. Dotton was also president of the New Bedford chapter of the NAACP. I'd like to thank Mrs. Thorne, who took me in as a stranger on June 21st, 1965, into her home. and let me live there. Not knowing who I was, God trusted me to their care. We'd like to thank also Mr. Lou Randall and his wife Betty Randall, Elizabeth Randall, for being my mentor and for coaching me how to survive away from home. We'd like to also thank in New Bedford Mr. William Carmo and his family, past president of the NAACP, and the present director, chairman of the NAACP in New Bedford, Massachusetts, Mr. Lee Charlton and Mrs. Frances Charlton and their wife. Along with Linwood McDaniels, the past director of the Rodman Job Corps Center in New Bedford, which I was employed as a member of their great staff, the late Mr. Barry Fisher, who was co-director of Rodman Job Corps Center, along with Jerry Ziegler from Chicago of Science Research Associates, an affiliate of IBM, of which I was privileged to work for, and Mr. Ted Nelson, who is the past chairman of the Rodman Job Corps Center in New Bedford. I can't remember all, but these are some of the key people I like to thank. The late, great Mayor of New Bedford, Edward F. Harrington, who welcomed us all there in the summer of 1965. Now, there are many more that I could think of, but I'd like to thank Frederick Douglass. I'd like to thank Sergeant William Carney, who's the only Negro Afro-American to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor for his heroic efforts when the 54th Regiment from Massachusetts and Company C went south in 1863 to Fort Wagner in South Carolina. And when the troops were almost mowed down, it was like actually they walked into death. Sergeant William Carney held the flag up of the Union. He said, "Boys, the old flag, she never touched the ground." So we are standing here today, almost 130 or 40 years later. Okay. We want to thank also the family, thank you for the coaching, of Mrs. Lorraine Francis George, my wife and the mother of my 3 children, for the last 36 years, who've lived with me, and she's been my top promoter and supporter. We want to thank, her name now is Lorraine Francis George Khazan. Please forgive me. She's my coach on the sidelines, you know. Thank you, love. We want to thank her family, the family of Mr. Thomas and Mrs. Marie, Mr. Thomas Tim George and Mrs. Marie Easton George, for supporting me all this time, and my 3 beautiful children, Hosanna, Alethea, and Camille Khazan. And we want to thank the families of the Eastons, the Tims, the Blakes, the Georges, the Johnsons, the Rays, the Draytons, the Whites, the Brooks again, the Horns, and all others, the Almeidas, Madeiros, the Silvas, the Texeras, Francisco Texera and his wife Avelina. There's so many others. We want to thank also the members of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge, jurisdiction of Massachusetts, for their support for freedom since they were first initiated on March the 5th, March the 6th, 1775, in Boston, Massachusetts, by an Irish military lodge. We want to thank the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Master, Brother Phillips, who's now the current Worshipful Grand Master, the past Worshipful Grand Master, Brother Walter R. Butler III, the one before him, Brother Attorney John Bino, the one before him, Brother John Maddox, and of course, Brother Robert McLean, and Brother Chester Robert Isles. And for those whom I have not mentioned, please forgive me because I can't remember them all right now. But especially I want to thank my mentor and guide, the most worshipful, past worshipful Grand Master of Prince Hall Grand Lodge, Free and Accepted Masons in Massachusetts, Brother Lloyd B. Miller. Right now, whose health is not well, but we pray God will strengthen him every day. To thank the worshipful master of Union Lodge number 4, Free and Accepted Masons in New Bedford, Massachusetts, Mr. George R. Wynn, Brother George R. Wynn, and all the officers and brothers of Union Lodge number 4. Past worshipful master, Mr. David Penner, past worshipful master, Brother Wayne Thomas, and past worshipful masters, Brother John Penner, past worshipful master, Brother Randy Pollitt, past worshipful master, Cecil, I'm trying to think of his name right now, please, but Lopes, past worshipful master, Matthew Lopes, past worshipful master, Irving Meade, Brother Melvin Kivley, of whom position I took as the marshal in Union Lodge number 4. If I haven't remembered everyone, please forgive me. There's many names to remember. We want to thank all of you. We want to thank also the members of the Grand Chapter, the ladies and the men of the Grand Chapter of the Order of Eastern Star of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge, Free and Accepted Masons in Massachusetts. We'd like to thank Sister Worthy Matron, Miss Gloria Hill, and all the brothers and sisters and officers of J.W. Hood Chapter number 12, Order of the Eastern Star of New Bedford, Massachusetts. We'd like also to thank the national leaders and officers of the Improved Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks of the World, who helped pay hundreds and thousands of young people's way to college. I am one of them. The Improved Benevolent Protective Order Elks of the World, under the leadership of Exalted Ruler, Most Exalted Ruler Hobson Reynolds in 1960, and the Grand Commissioner of Education, Grand Commissioner Colonel George W. Lee of Memphis, Tennessee, Mr. Lonnie E. Reynolds, the Commissioner of Education for North Carolina, and Mr. C.C. Miller helped pay the way of these 4 fellows to go to A&T College, 4-year scholarships in the summer of 1960 at their convention in Chicago, Illinois. Once again, we want to thank you and those people for honoring us. We want to thank Ms. Valerie Jones for being the video technician today. And by the way, today is Tuesday, February the 4th. I want to say happy birthday to all of you born on February 1. And during this time, when the moon is in the 7th house, and Jupiter is lined with Mars, and peace is among the planets, and love is for us all. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. We want to thank all of you for supporting us, and today is Tuesday, February 4th. To my mother, Corrine Lee Williams Blair, I say, happy birthday to you. You will always be 22, should be 80 on February 8th. Happy birthday, dear mother. Happy birthday to you. And of course, we want to thank Mr. Tom Sexton and his great staff of Cable Access 95 in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Cable Access 95, we love you. And we want to thank also Cable Access in Greensboro, North Carolina, for all the good work you've done. And the people love freedom throughout the world. God bless you all. And to my teachers and, the traditional African culture, Dr. Wandi Abimbola, and all the members of Ile Ise Shango Ewelire, and to my spiritual mother, Mother Iya Osun Kimi, and Sango Yemi, and to Anandama, and Sri Anandama and Sri Dilipji, and to Sri Dhyana Yogi, and to Paramahansa Yogananda, and to Sheikh Bawa Muhyiddin, all the brothers and sisters out there of Yogi Desai and Anahata Yoga, and all the brothers and sisters of Bawa Fellowship throughout the world, and Dr. York, Dr. Malachi York, and the brothers and sisters of the Nuwabian Moorish Society of the world. Hope I got that right. Anyway, forgive me if I didn't include everyone. We want to thank all of you, Baba O'Surgerman, and the brothers and sister, Her Royal Grace, Iya Shanla of the Oyotunzi Yoruba village down in South Carolina. I owe a lot of people. And thanks again for Dr. Ron McNeil, the great-great-grandson of Chief Sitting Bull, Wankin Tonka. We thank you for Noble Drew Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and all the people who guide us toward light and enlightenment, and the late El Haj Malik, Malcolm X. Amen, I say, and Sister Betty Shabazz. May God bless them all. Lift you up. May we rise high beyond the sky. Remember to keep the torch of liberty burning brightly. Hold the light of freedom high. Remember to love God and our neighbors ourselves, and reach for the rainbow beyond the sky. I say, so ma'ad be it. Assalamu alaikum and shalom alaikum. And we haven't forgot you, Dr. Howard Waynick, our mentor, and Buffalo Bob Smith, and Howdy Doody, Captain Kangaroo, and all the guys who guided us in the peanut gallery toward light and enlightenment so we could be here today. We thank you again. God bless you all. Keep you with you. Peace be unto you. We behold